What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the One Question Leadership Podcast. This is Marissa Robinson, Executive Director for DEI at Georgetown. Throughout my career, I have participated in various NCAA leadership development programs, including the Career and Sports Forum, the Postgraduate Internship Program, and currently the Dr. Charles Whitcomb Leadership Institute. These programs have taught me that leadership takes work and effort. They have reminded me that as leaders, it is our responsibility to continue to grow, challenge ourselves, and encourage those around us to do the same. However, as we continue to grow and to pour into others, it is also imperative to take care of ourselves. Remember, you cannot sustain a movement by sacrificing self-care. So provide yourself some grace and then get back after it. Enjoy the episode.
Welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast. My name is Kendi Hilliard, and I'm a current volleyball player at Illinois State University, and today I will be guest hosting this episode of One Question. On this podcast, we have Shamaree Brown, the Director of Student Athlete Programs and Compliance at the ACC. Hi, Shamaree, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Kendi. Good to see you. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to this conversation.
For starters, you were a former football student athlete at Winston-Salem State University, and then you worked in compliance and student athlete development at New Haven as the assistant athletics director. And finally, before you got to the ACC, you worked as the assistant director of compliance and championships at the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference. So now that you're at the ACC, what makes your position different or similar to other positions at other conferences?
Sure. So I've been at the ACC for almost 12 years. And when I got here, we were the only conference that had a position similar to mine. So in my position, I oversee and work with our institutions and everything student athlete welfare related. So everything from student athlete development to health and safety to academic support, career development, leadership development, everything that's forward facing to the student athlete that's not necessarily connected directly to their sport. Right. So spending a lot of my time just really honing in with our campuses and their administrators on the student athlete experience. So as I said, we were the first conference to have such a position. I think now there are two additional. So there are three conferences across the country that I'm aware of that has a similar position that's really focused in on student athlete welfare for the student athletes within their conference.
Why do you think your position is important at the conference level? Like, what makes it so vital to the student athlete success?
Yeah, I think for multiple reasons. The first is making sure that our student athlete's voice is engaged and heard from a governance standpoint. At the conference level, we're here to ensure that rules are being followed, to ensure that the playing rules and that our institutions feel a competitive balance. Right. And so as we adopt policy and look at legislative changes, it's really important that we hear from our student athletes and give our student athletes an active role in the direction that our sports and our conference go. So I'll say first is making sure that our student athletes have a voice. The second piece is making sure that the administrators, the professionals that are working day to day with our student athletes also have a voice. Our administrators, our athletic directors and presidents and chancellors, have discussions and enact policy that are well intended. But it's really important that the people that are actively doing it have input to make sure that there aren't too many unintended consequences. And then the other piece is how can we be a value add to the work that our campuses are doing for their student athletes, right? So whether it's career development and being able to add a few more internships and job opportunities for their student athletes, or building collaboration amongst our campuses. Right. We're fortunate to have tremendous institutions within the ACC that are doing great things. And so in my role, I'm really passionate about making sure that we're building a community of individuals, of like-minded individuals and like-minded professionals that can share best practices with one another, and that's student athletes included. So I think it's really important that we continue to, provide that personal side of collegiate athletics, that personal side of the ACC to our student athletes and our members on campus.
Yeah, totally. And I think it even starts at just the student athlete level of them just being comfortable with people in your position, especially at their respective campuses. And I know you talked a bit about what's the difference between on campus and at the conference level, but what is the challenge for you whenever you have to kind of fight for the student athlete side, but also kind of have to do your side at the conference level? And like, do you have to gather resources, or what's the biggest challenge in that aspect?
Right. So, at the conference office, one of the challenges is trying to direct 15 different institutions and 15 different cultures into one direction. So what works best at one institution may not necessarily work at another institution, but there's a lot of commonality that our schools agree on. Right. So always trying to build consensus, I think is one of the challenges. Especially as to how one feels they should lead their student athletes. Like I said before, we want to have a personal touch to our student athletes, to our campus administrators. From an athlete standpoint, when I first got here, it was interesting to me that our student athletes identified the ACC by their championship, right? Hey, I'm going to the ACCs to participate. I'm going to the ACCs to compete, but didn't necessarily know about the people that were behind the ACC, the people that were in our office that were making, that championship run. So we thought it very important and made it a priority to connect everyone within our office with the student athletes, so the student athletes would completely understand the people behind the brand or behind the logo. So we just at the end of the day want to make sure from a student athlete experience standpoint that our student athletes are our priority. And that can be a challenge sometimes at the conference office because we don't have a day-to-day interaction with student athletes like campuses do, right? Like administrators on campus that every time they walk out of their office, they're going to run into a student athlete, and every other meeting that they have is going to be with student athletes. We have to be intentional about making sure student athletes are in the forefront of every decision that we're making just because we don't see our student athletes every single day.
Right. And just with everything happening in recent events and social justice and just student athletes taking their voice, how involved would your SAC be at the conference level? Is it a change from the institution, or is it more involvement? How do you go about using your SAC?
Yeah, we were fortunate, especially over the last year and a half, 2 years, where we've had a really good relationship, really good involvement with our SAC. And so when we had the summer of George Floyd, SAC was already engaged. They convened themselves, right, independently of us as a conference to decide on what they felt the conference reaction should be collectively, right? And so they had their meeting and they took the points of their meeting back to their individual campuses. And from there, they kind of led us, or at least communicated to us what their desires were and what they would want us to see, everybody from the commissioner down, as far as, wanting to hear from the commissioner, wanting to hear from the athletic directors, wanting to hear and have an opportunity to connect with each other. So SAC, our student athletes, we depend on a lot. Like I said before, one of the priorities is making sure our student athletes have a voice, have a say-so in the governance of our league. And once again, we're just fortunate to have student athletes that believe in leadership. We saw it a month or so ago when we had our SAC presidents write a letter to Congress, right, asking for federal legislation around name, image, likeness. So we've just always been fortunate to have student athletes that understood the power of their voice and aren't afraid to execute that power, exercise that power, have open conversation, open communication with the leaders within our conference.
Yeah, and with leadership and just talking about leadership in this new generation of student athletes now, how can you reflect on your time as a student athlete? Like, would you have been involved in SAC, or what changes would you make now looking back on it?
Yeah, I always joke. I think SAC was just starting when I was a student athlete, right? So I knew it was a meeting that was happening with a few student athletes, but had no idea exactly what was going on. Definitely, if I would have known better, it would have been a group that I would have been a part of, right? Just because I believe there are so many transferable skills that SAC teaches, right? From leadership, from garnering support, even to how you lead meetings, right? Just basic skills like that, to your interaction and networking with folks, your peers and folks, across the various landscapes that you're in as a student athlete. I think now student athletes continue to see the importance of SAC and opportunities that SAC provides to them. But at the same time, we still see that it's only a handful of our student athletes that's actively involved in SAC and in leadership opportunities as it relates to college athletics. Across the board, we still struggle at times to get men's basketball student athletes. We still struggle at times to get some football student athletes, to get some baseball student athletes, right? And, as we see all of the hot topics that's happening nationally and from a, lawsuit standpoint, those are the sports that's, everyone's focusing in on. And, I think it's really important for them to understand that they have a voice and have an input with the direction that we're going in. And it's important for them to begin to get, more active, more involved than they have recently.
Yeah, I love how you keep kind of honing in on the point that student athletes have a voice, because that point kind of gets lost as we continue to move forward with so many different changes across the athletics culture. And just from your standpoint of being at the conference, I just would like to know, what is your own personal leadership philosophy? Not even as a student, but currently just reflecting on all your life experiences at an institution, at the conference, and now.
For me, it's about service, right? Like my personal mission statement is serving others so that they can achieve success, and that success, however they define it to be. Right. So part of it is serving them and helping people to discover, one, what their passion, what their life's purpose is, but then also discover what success looks like for them. Right. Because we're all challenged and believe of what success is supposed to look like because of what someone else has said to us and what someone else has put into us. It's a challenge for us to begin to understand what success truly looks like for us. So for me personally, it's really about serving others and helping them to understand and prepare and have experiences that teaches them who they are and what they should be doing and what gives them passion, what gives them life and the passions that they have in life. But then also, how do they go about achieving success, however that may look.
I love that. And just to kind of go deeper, what are some of your deepest core values, or what drives you to keep working in athletics?
Yeah. And, my three core values, deep core values, are faith, family, and servitude. Right. So that's how my personal mission statement kind of aligns with those three core values. And there are times, quite honestly, working in collegiate athletics where those values get challenged. Right. And that's where you have to I have to really evaluate and analyze, one, my career, my profession, but then also analyze what impact do I have, and making sure that my values continue to align with what I do. Right. And so those values for me align perfectly in the work that we're able to do from a student athlete focused, student athlete welfare standpoint. And I'm happy that it does. Right. Because the day that my values no longer aligns with what I feel like I'm doing professionally, I'm no longer going to work in this business. I would tell anyone, young people especially, we first have to identify what our core values are before we do anything else, before we take another step. What are your values, right? What are you willing to die for? What are you willing to cut off friendships for? What are you willing to separate from if it, defies the values that you've set for yourself?
So my next question kind of would be for you, what's next? So you're at the conference level at ACC, one of the biggest Power Fives. Would you ever go back to an institution, or do you kind of just want to stay at the conference level?
Yeah. So when people ask me that question, I always say that I feel like I want to get back to campus. Right. I began my career on campus. The last 15, 16 years of my career, I've been at conference offices, and I feel like I want to get back on campus. Especially in the work that I've participated in over the last 12 years, directly involved with our student athletes. And like I said before, you don't get that daily interaction at the conference office. So being back a part of that action and being fully engulfed in a culture and supporting student athletes and seeing their growth from freshman year to departing the institution on a daily basis almost, it's something that really intrigues me. So yeah, I think, next step, if I leave the ACC, more than likely it would be to go to a campus.
Yeah, I love that answer, especially because as a young professional right now, just trying to figure out where I would want to start, and just having so many different experiences within working in athletics, I think it's just really important to kind of get different perspectives of, should I start on campus? Should I start in the conference? So I really appreciate that answer. And you kind of discussed it already, but what advice do you have for student athletes like me who want to work in athletics, Like, how do we start? Where do we start? Who should we talk to? What field is most important to us, or most field to succeed fast? Or
I tell everyone, every student athlete, every young person, every college student who, I'll speak with and they're looking for career advice, start where you are. Your institution that you're at has a need. I can guarantee you there's somewhere somebody that can use the assistance. But start where you are and begin to get the experience there, but also developing the relationships there. Because where you are is going to be your biggest and easiest opportunity to formulate the relationships and, get the mentors that will become sponsors and recommend you for various positions. There's no place like home, right? As far as the passion that you have, the vested interest that you have of making and wanting to see somewhere, a place be great. So I always encourage people to start where they are, right? And for me, I was fortunate. I came up on a compliance side. And I still believe that having the basic knowledge and understanding of compliance is a tremendous foundation within collegiate athletics, because nothing really goes further than the compliance's approval, but it also gave me an opportunity to connect in multiple levels and multiple departments within the organization. And also started at a Division II institution where I had to wear multiple hats, right? So compliance, student athlete development, but also some game operations, also some fundraising, and just getting a vast experience within collegiate athletics. And so I tell young people all the time, especially those that are still in school, is get as much experience in all of the departments as you can. You don't know what you don't know. And the only way to learn that is to get some experience. Whether you're spending a month in a department. I mean, I can remember being in school and doing internships. I did an internship in sports information, internship in marketing, game operations. And the one place I didn't do an internship in was compliance, but it ended up being my career path. But it's really important to kind of expose yourself to all of the different levels within college athletics. And then as we move forward, I think young people are well positioned because as we look at what's happening next from a technology standpoint, how does that play into collegiate athletics, right? Every part of life, every part of business has an intersection within athletics. I think I would encourage our young people, such as yourself, to engage and learn as much about the upcoming trends, the technologies, right? We just saw Facebook change the name to Meta. What does the metaverse mean? How can athletics and sport engage and interact with the metaverse? And then also understanding at the end of the day, the revenue generation piece. How is money made within collegiate athletics? How are athletics supported to really have a basic understanding, especially at this age, a basic understanding as to how the business runs?
My last question for you is, as someone who is currently working in the college athletics field, what is the biggest way or the biggest step to getting more minorities or people of color into the college athletics industry?
It's not a tough question. I think the short answer to that question is people need to hire ethnic minorities. People need to hire more. We need to hire more Black people. We need to hire more minorities. But in doing so, there are programs that are popping up. We're seeing popping up that's providing training, that's providing development for young people. One of the things myself and a few of my friends in the business, Ashton Henderson, Lamar Pottinger, Adrian Haraway, began this past spring, was what we call the Brotherhood Alliance, right? And it was just personal development mentorship program in which we engage other Black men within our business to help bring up or connect with a young black male, either recent grad or senior in college, and have them prepared for these opportunities, right, that were popping up, right? So we saw a bunch of McClendon's opportunities, job opportunities. We saw a bunch of internships that were directed to ethnic minorities. And so we want to make sure that our people are prepared for those positions, that their resumes look like they're supposed to look, right? Because from a personality standpoint, our young people are awesome. But when you see them on paper, sometimes the awesomeness of them personally doesn't jump off their paper. And so we want to make sure that from a Black male standpoint, that we were pouring into some of our young Black men and helping to prepare them for that entry point into collegiate athletics. There are a lot of different programs out there, but at the end of the day, we need a chance. And so as more opportunities, as more chances pop up, we'll see the growth of ethnic minorities within our business. But we got a long way to go.
Yes, sir. I agree. We do have a long way to go, but with people like you in the industry, I think we're going to be moving quite faster than we think.
Absolutely. I agree.
But thank you so much for taking time to do the podcast with me. I met you at my brother's wedding this past summer. So really enjoyed meeting you there and can't wait to talk to you soon.
Likewise. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is Kendi Hilliard on the One Question Leadership podcast. Go you Redbirds.
This episode of the One Question Leadership podcast is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.